They say your whole life flashes before your eyes at the moment of death, but no one warns you about the moment your future is being sold. That's what it felt like. Not dying. Worse. Betrayal. Is anybody out there? I whispered into the dark, staring at the peeling paint above my narrow attic bed. Somebody please. Of course, no one answered. By tomorrow morning the Monroe family would land in Halifax, carrying a gift of $30 million meant to buy me off like a rare collectible. A decorative bird for Mr. Calvin Monroe's gold cage. Calvin Monroe, industrial magnate, 62, twice divorced, with eyes like winter and hands even colder. And my parents, they were ecstatic. You should be grateful, my mother told me, her gaze glittering with the promise of luxury. Do you realize what this will do for us? For the Hampton name. I knew exactly what it would do. Reduce me to a transaction. Nobody cared that Calvin was notorious for mistresses, that he already had 2 secret children, that he treated women as footnotes to his empire. You'd throw all this away for your pride, my father thundered. You want to drag this family back to nothing over some childish notion of love? No. I wanted freedom. I'd rather live under a leaky roof with someone kind than in a palace with a man whose heart was ice. But saying that aloud had earned me a slap and a warning. If you walk out before the engagement, my father hissed, don't bother coming back. So I stayed. For now. But I had a plan, or rather, a reckless idea. I sent one message to an old friend who owed me a favor. Find me someone. Anyone. Tonight. Make it look real. That was how it began. My plan to con my own family, to break free from the velvet handcuffs they called a marriage. I didn't know then that the stranger I'd meet would change everything. That the man across a chipped cafe table would be the start of something real. I only knew one thing. I had until dawn to escape the life they'd scripted for me. And I would rewrite it myself. He doesn't need to be rich, I told Naomi, my closest friend, as she tugged my coat into place. He just needs to look like the kind of man my parents would never accept. Naomi raised an eyebrow. You're serious about this? Completely. It was reckless, maybe even dangerous. But it was better than becoming Mrs. Calvin Monroe. Naomi made a few calls. A cousin had a friend, and that friend had a coworker. A quiet man named Marcus Reed, a single father who worked long shifts as a carpenter. He wasn't flashy, but he was kind, dependable, and most importantly, he wouldn't ask too many questions. That was enough for me. We met in a little corner cafe near the docks. Marcus showed up in a navy hoodie, worn jeans, and steel-toe boots dusted from the day's work. He looked tired and quietly striking. Selena, he asked cautiously. I nodded. Thank you for coming. He slid into the chair across from me. For a beat, neither of us spoke. My heart pounded. Then I blurted out, this might sound strange, but I need a favor. He chuckled softly. Most people start with coffee. This isn't a date, I said quickly. It's an escape. I told him enough to make the picture clear. That my parents were forcing me into a deal with a wealthy man twice my age. That I needed someone to pose as my boyfriend, maybe even my husband, just long enough to break the contract. Marcus didn't flinch. So, what exactly do you need from me? Convince them I'm already taken. Make me unavailable. He thought for a moment, then nodded slowly. And after that, we part ways? Yes. He studied me with a soft, sad half-smile, then said, all right, I'll help. We spent the next hour inventing a story, how we'd met, how long we'd been together, little details that could make the lie believable. I watched the heaviness ease from his shoulders as we joked about fake anniversaries and inside jokes. When we finally stood to leave, Marcus said quietly, I know this is pretend, but you shouldn't be treated like property. That was the moment I realized I was already in deeper than I planned. You're what? My father's roar rattled the walls. I'm already married, I repeated, though my voice wavered. Marcus stood beside me, his hand lightly threaded through mine. My pulse thundered, so loudly I could barely hear. My mother clutched her pearls, eyes wide with disbelief. To who? She gasped. To me, Marcus answered evenly. Marcus Reed. Carpenter. Father. The silence that followed felt like it could split the room in half. We had faked the paperwork. Naomi had a friend at City Hall who owed her a favor. It was legal, fast, and binding enough to sink the Monroe deal. My father's fury exploded. My mother shrieked about disgrace, money lost, and betrayal. Calvin Monroe never even showed up. Once word spread that I was off the market, the arrangement collapsed. No fortune, no alliance, no future. My father spat. You were never trying to save me, I whispered back. You only cared about yourselves. That night, they cut me off completely, financially, emotionally, legally. To the Hamptons, I no longer existed. Marcus didn't hesitate. He opened his small apartment to me. It wasn't much. 2 cramped rooms, mismatched furniture, but it was warm. His little girl, Maya, stayed with him on weekends. She was curious and full of questions. Are you going to be my new mommy? She asked one evening, her wide eyes blinking up at me. I nearly broke. We fell into a rhythm. I cooked. He cleaned. We shared a couch, then a bed. Once, we even shared a toothbrush by mistake and laughed about it. Somewhere between pretending and surviving, we forgot it was supposed to be an act. Living with Marcus felt like holding a secret. He brewed my coffee exactly the way I liked it, even when I didn't ask. He left little notes on the fridge in blocky handwriting that made me smile. His stories from the job site became the highlight of my evenings. He never demanded more than I could give. He never judged me for my nightmares, or the way I flinched at loud voices. And slowly, I began to dream again. I picked up my sketchbook and started drawing jewelry designs that came from my heart, not from anyone else's expectations. I stayed up late sketching rings and pendants just because I wanted to. One afternoon, I spotted a posting. Aurora Designs, one of the largest jewelry houses in the U.S., was hiring. I laughed to myself. Me? Apply there? I didn't have a degree, only a portfolio and a stubborn dream. Marcus glanced at my sketches and said with certainty, "You're ready." So I applied. The interview was terrifying. Their headquarters gleamed with glass walls and steel accents. The other candidates clicked by in designer heels and tailored suits. I almost bolted when they called my name. But I didn't, because Marcus believed in me. And maybe, for the first time, I believed in me too. What happened next caught me completely off guard. The man waiting in the conference room looked like he had stepped straight out of a magazine, tall, polished, every detail of his suit intentional. His presence filled the space before he even spoke. "Selina Hampton," he said, holding my portfolio as though it were rare art. "Yes," I managed, rising too quickly. He flipped through my sketches with deliberate care. "Your work has something most designers can't fake. Honesty. Emotion." I blinked. "Thank you. I'm Christopher Vaughn," he said finally, CEO of Aurora Designs. For a second, I forgot how to breathe. The CEO. Why was he personally here? He must have seen the question in my face. "I saw one of your lockets at a small exhibit 2 years ago. A silver crescent with hand-etched stars. I never forgot it." My throat tightened. That piece had been one of the last things I'd made before my world collapsed. "You're hired," he said simply. Just like that. When I stepped out of that building, the city sky looked brighter than it had in months. I called Marcus, who laughed so loud I had to hold the phone away from my ear. "Told you," he said. "You were born for this." But later that night, when I replayed the moment in my head, I kept thinking about the look in Christopher's eyes. Sharp, steady, and strangely familiar. Working at Aurora was everything I hoped and feared. The pace was relentless, the designs demanding, the pressure suffocating. And I loved it, until the whispers began. "She doesn't even have a degree," I overheard one day. "Got in because Vaughn's got a soft spot, or maybe more than that," someone else snickered. I kept walking, head high, but inside I was crumbling. Christopher never wavered. He critiqued my work with precision, praised my creative risks, and respected my process. But the stares, the rumors, they gnawed at me. And then came Vanessa, my stepsister. Beautiful, cunning, and cruel. She appeared at a gala like a thunderstorm in heels, announcing that she had also applied to Aurora. Then, with a smirk, she accused me of stealing her designs. It was a lie, sharpened like a blade, but it spread fast. Christopher called me into his office. "We need to talk," he said evenly. "You believe her?" I whispered, frozen. "I believe in evidence," he replied. Then his gaze softened. "And I believe in you." That's when Marcus walked in with proof. timestamp sketches, backups, every receipt of my work. He laid it all out on Christopher's desk. She didn't steal anything. I can prove it. Christopher studied us for a long moment before nodding. You're cleared. Relief washed over me like rain after a drought. That night, as I stepped out of the building, Christopher was waiting. I knew it wasn't true, he said quietly. But part of this job is protecting the company, even when my heart is pulling the other way. I froze. Your heart. He exhaled. Selena, from the moment I saw you, I knew you were different. I didn't know what to say, so I whispered the only thing I could. Thank you. And deep down, I wondered what Marcus would think if he knew my heart was drifting toward a man I never expected to want. Marcus didn't press me for answers. He never did. But he noticed the changes, how I stayed later at work, how my smile lingered whenever I mentioned Christopher. One night, as we washed dishes side by side, he spoke quietly. You're happy, he said. I froze, plate in hand. I'm trying. His eyes searched mine. Is it him? I couldn't lie. Not to Marcus. I don't know, I whispered. It's complicated. He nodded slowly, drying his hands. I never expected to keep you, Selena. I just wanted to help you find your wings. Tears stung my eyes. You did more than that. You saved me. He gave me a soft, sad smile. Then maybe it's time to let you go. The next morning, I found an envelope on the table. Inside were signed divorce papers and a short note. Freedom doesn't always look like a fairy tale. Sometimes it's just letting go, so someone can find their true path. I'll always be proud of you. Marcus. I cried. Not because I'd lost a husband, but because I'd lost the only man who had ever loved me without trying to change me. Christopher didn't rush me. He gave me space, waiting with a patience that felt like respect. And when he finally invited me to his lakeside home outside Asheville, I went, not as an escape, but as a choice. We stood on the dock as the sun melted into the horizon, painting the water gold. I don't want to be another rescue project, I told him. He took my hands gently. I'm not here to save you, Selena. I want to build with you. Side by side. The silence that followed wasn't heavy. It was warm. Safe. I think I love you, I admitted at last, the words trembling but true. I know, he whispered, leaning closer. And I think I'm still learning how to love myself, too. Let me be here while you do. For the first time, it didn't feel like starting over. It felt like finally starting.